Whether Australia should have a nuclear future or not is a defining issue in this federal election, and the outcome will shape Australia's economy for the next 50 plus years. Well, joining us live is nuclear law lecturer at the University of Adelaide, Kirsty Braybon. Kirsty, thank you very much for joining us. You've also got a Bachelor of Law from Flinders University, a Master of Law and a higher degree of research from the University of Western Australia, and a graduate diploma of international nuclear law. So you know your stuff well. How quickly can a potential ban be lifted, and what are we then capable of doing if it is?
Yeah, the timing on lifting the ban really comes down to political support. It's about getting the numbers in the houses. So if we had bipartisan support, it could get done really quickly. Otherwise, you've got to get the numbers in the House from the crossbench. And as we know, with the ban that was lifted to allow for the nuclear-powered submarines, it can be done very quickly.
All right, so the Albanese government has described the coalition's nuclear energy policy as a fantasy, and there are also concerns from various leaders and other people in the community about nuclear energy. Here's independent for Warringah MP Zali Steggall a short time ago here on Sky News.
The key issues are cost, that it is water use as well, and then the question of waste. So there are a number of areas of concern when it comes to nuclear. I think what Peter Dutton doesn't outline in that clip or in his speech is the countries that have had nuclear for a long time. They have had nuclear for some 30, 40 years, which means it's a mature technology, well established. They have the workforce and the regulatory framework to allow for it. These are all part of the problems for Australia. We simply don't have that framework in place.
So, Kirsty, certainly a lot of common issues, would you say? Waste, expense, the water issue. What do you make of these?
Yeah, well, Zali spoke on a number of issues. So first on the water, water is not an issue. Politicians like to make it about water because Australians can resonate with issues associated with water. So it hits an Australian hard when we talk about that. But running a nuclear power plant with water isn't really much different than running the turbine from a coal-fired power plant. There's a little bit more water for the coolant, but it's still steam.
So there's not too much of an issue?
No, and when we talk about cost, yes, we know that nuclear can be expensive, but we can inflate the numbers by, drawing comparisons from, say, Hinkley Point C in the UK, which is a first-of-a-kind reactor being built, which has been very expensive. But then when you compare it to tried and tested technologies by the Koreans, for example, that's been rolled out in the UAE, then your costings become lower. So we know it is expensive, but we shouldn't be focusing on the upfront costs when it comes to nuclear. We should be focusing on the cost of electricity to the consumer. And what you're building is something that can operate for 100 years. So that's where the cost-benefit analysis comes in for nuclear. The other thing that Zali spoke about was that, well, we don't have a nuclear industry and therefore it's just much harder for us compared to the rest of the world. Well, the reality is we've been making nuclear medicine for a very, very long time. In fact, I heard a statistic the other day that Australia supplies 15% of the world's nuclear medicine. So we have been doing that for a long time already. We're also embarking on AUKUS. There's an immense amount of work that's going on at the moment to build a regulatory framework for a really complex defence project with small modular reactors inside boats using highly enriched uranium. That's far more complex than a nuclear power plant. So the work is already underway to build a more difficult framework that we can just piggyback off of, then also utilising our existing established nuclear medicine framework.
What about waste and timeline?
Yeah, waste. Well, we have waste in Australia already. We have waste from the nuclear medicine that we create, our mining industry, our agricultural industry, our oil and gas industry. It's stored in 100 different locations across Australia. And we also have a nuclear waste facility that disposes of nuclear waste in Western Australia, known as Sandy Ridge, run by Tellers Holdings. We will also need to build a high-level waste site for the AUKUS submarines. So not only do we have solutions already, we need to find more. So if you're putting in a small density of waste, and we're talking about, a Coke can of waste per person, to go into a facility that we're going to have to build for the submarines anyway. Well, waste actually isn't a science problem. It is a public perception problem. And when it comes to the timeline, well, I think Australia could operate a nuclear power plant in 10 to 12 years. Australia built the Opal medical reactor in Sydney, which was the first of kind technology at the time, and we delivered that in about 9 years.
All right, well, people don't want wind turbines, solar turbines in their backyard, so to speak. Would you be happy having a nuclear power plant in your backyard?
100%. I'd have a nuclear power plant or a nuclear waste facility in my backyard. In fact, you'd get more radiation from eating a banana than living next to a nuclear power plant for a year.
So you get more radiation from eating a banana than living in a nuclear power plant. Explain that, and where did you get that information from?
Yeah, so that's because bananas have potassium in them, which has radiation. It's a natural form of radiation. And that statistic actually comes from the NRC, so the Nuclear Regulatory Commission out of the USA. And that was a study that was done by, I think it was the University of California. And it's a statistic that's thrown around by the US quite commonly for people that live right next door to nuclear reactors.
Isn't it true? Don't people have to have potassium iodide tablets if they're living near nuclear power plants?
You're talking about the iodine tablets?
Yeah, potassium iodine.
Yeah, that's something
or radiation
that gets handed out if there's been an exposure of
right.
radiation into the air. Like it's something that happens as a part of a potential emergency response. It's not always the case. It depends on the circumstance.
All right, so you would be more than happy to have a nuclear power plant in your backyard, so to speak. You're saying that the waste is not really an issue. Is there any issues then that you see?
No, not really. Not for Australia. I think we're the perfect country to embark on this. You know, not only are we embarking on nuclear-powered submarines, we're the third largest supplier of uranium to the world. We have the perfect geology to do a deep geological waste repository. Australia is ready. We have been for decades. Adding nuclear power to our energy mix is just a smart solution.
All right, we've got to wrap it up, but thank you so much.